and welcome to the second episode of the Sable International Citizenship Podcast. My name is Tallulah, and I'm here with Mishal Patel, a British citizenship and immigration expert and director of our Immigration and Citizenship Division. Today, we will be talking about the EU settlement scheme, which comes to an end this month. You can find a transcript and the episode show notes on our website, www.sableinternational.com. Now, the EU settlement scheme, or EUSS, is the program that the UK government put in place for EU citizens who were already living in the UK at the time of Brexit. While there has been a large push by the government for people to register, there's still some uncertainty around the program that we wanted to help clarify. Mishal, can you tell us a little about the program and how one goes about applying?
Sure. So the program really is the UK's promise to EU citizens living within the UK, or those who have family members who are EU citizens that migrated to the UK before 1st of January 2021. And the promise really was that they would make it a very simple and free process for these EU citizens so that they're not losing any rights over the UK's decision to leave the European Union. And how it actually works is actually quite simple in one way, but obviously it has different stages. So the first stage is really first finding out whether you're eligible, and I think we'll go through that in the next couple of questions perhaps. But if you are eligible and you've isolated that, then the first thing you need to do is get yourself what they call an EU exit ID document check app. Now, with this app, it is available across all sort of phones. And what it really does is, initially, it's going to allow you to scan your ID card. So that's the first process to verify your identity, and you do that via this app. There are other ways to do it. You can, get a scanner, book a scanner location, and they'll scan it for you, or you can post the document in, i.e. your EU national ID card or your EU passport, for that matter. The app is obviously the quickest, and you get to keep your originals. So that's quite handy. But once that's done, then the rest of the application has to be completed online at gov.uk. So there'll be a link there, and you go ahead and complete the application online. There is no payment for this application type. So again, the EU settlement scheme is completely free. Once you've made the online application, you'll begin an opportunity whilst you're completing that to upload all the supporting documents to support what type you're applying for, either the pre-settled status or the settled status for that matter. And once Home Office is satisfied, then they'll come back to you with the conclusion. So that's sort of a very brief overview of how one can apply.
So you mentioned settled and pre-settled. Do you just want to clarify what the difference is?
Sure. So there is a vast difference. So pre-settled status is a 5-year leave to remain that's been issued under the scheme. And that means that you'll be looking forward at the end of the 5 years to apply for settled status. And that settled status is basically the UK's way of giving indefinite leave to remain under the scheme.
So that's the new permanent residency, right? And then the settled status, if you're applying for settled status, you must do that if you already have permanent residency.
Absolutely. So permanent residency are a document which is a sort of blue foldable document or a card document, or sometimes endorsed onto one's passport that says certifying permanent residence. That has been long the case under the EEA regulations when we were part of the European Union. And with leaving the UK, the European Union, and the transitional provisions coming to an end on the 30th of June 2021, we know that document will no longer be valid for the purposes of living and residing in the UK. So if you are someone that's got the permanent residence document, it would be best if you apply for the settlement under the settlement scheme to continue your residence.
Because permanent residency will no longer be valid, right? It's no longer going to be valid. Settlement is replacing it. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So that's one reason that it's important to apply if you're currently a permanent resident. But if you're not yet a permanent resident and you're looking at the pre-settled status, what are some other reasons that it's very important not to miss the end of the month's deadline?
Sure. If you are an EU citizen that hasn't really taken advantage of the scheme or don't know if you can, then it would be worth getting some advice over that or getting into the scheme now before the 30th of June 2021, because there are mainly three reasons. The first reason has to be that if the UK is your main home going ahead, then we know that all bodies in the UK, so the bank, your doctor's surgery, if you're on a mortgage, so again, in any financial lending company, employers will all need to verify whether you have the correct leave or status in the UK to get into those services or to be employed for that matter. Now, if you're not going to go ahead and come under the scheme and get the pre-settled or settled status, you may be denied access to these services. And so will your family members on that basis as well, if they haven't taken advantage for the same thing. So that's number one reason, is the continuity of your stay in the UK. Number two reason is, if you are an EU citizen, perhaps who is thinking of getting it, not quite sure, get it, because again, if you need to get non-EU or EEA or Swiss family members from outside of the UK to come in after the deadline, it would be that you would need to first be under that scheme. That's the only way that they would be able to apply for what we call a family permit to come into the UK on the basis of being a family member of someone that is under the scheme at the moment. So again, you're closing the doors for future or for family members to come and potentially settle in the UK in the future after the deadline. So luckily, they haven't imposed a deadline on that yet, that part of the scheme yet, i.e. family members joining those who are already under the scheme and potentially have been living here before the sort of Brexit date, which would have been the 1st of January 2021.
Right.
So that's the second reason. And the third and last reason is, it is important to get this. Not only is it free, which is a massive saving, because otherwise everyone else that applies for indefinite remain is facing over £2,300 so government fees, but also it is a stepping stone in order to acquire British nationality or naturalize as a British citizen. So if you're not going to go ahead and get onto the scheme, you will have a very difficult time naturalizing as a British citizen. And when that happens, then of course, with British citizenship comes itself comes a lot of sort of sense of belonging and in the community, especially after the whole Brexit. So it would be a shame if you aren't able to get British citizenship just because you didn't take the right steps at this stage. So those are my three main reasons why I'll push someone, if they haven't thought about it, to go get it, even if they're not too sure whether they want to remain here in the future.
So it's also very important for employment, because after the deadline, employers are actually obligated to check your status. And if you don't have settled or pre-settled status as an EU citizen, you lose the right to work in the UK. And they have no option, because they can be fined for keeping you on staff. So they have to then relieve you of your employment.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. So all employers in UK have been briefed. There's a lot of guidance on this that's been provided on the Gov.uk site, confirming these are the right documents to look out for after the 30th of June 2021 onwards. And so the employers already know that they're looking for these statuses. Now, what's interesting here is a lot of people who are questioning. I had quite a few people actually questioning me within my friend circle and their friend circle. How do we exactly prove we've got it? Because some of them are not getting these biometric cards. So, from an example, our friend who is a very, very good friend of mine who was in Germany for a couple of years and then came in last year to take advantage of the scheme. And, he applied and he got a pre-settled status. And he's like, well, where's my visa? How do I prove it to anyone that I've got this? So again, just to clarify, when the Home Office make a decision, they will send you a letter by email as an attachment saying the application's been successful, you've got pre-settled status or you've got settled status. That itself is not proof of your status in the UK, actually. That just confirms the conclusion of that application. The actual proof of your status is actually, you have to log in So there's a separate website that you can go in to check your status. Again, links on the Gov.uk site. And
I will include the links in the article as well, and
Absolutely.
in the YouTube description.
Correct. And what will happen there is you log in, and you have to log in with the exact proof of ID number. So if you had your passport that you provided for the initial application, you can log in with that. And what it will do is it will take you to a site, and on that site, you can share a code with your future employer, bank official, whoever it is, a one-time access code. That code would then allow that person that's seeking to, satisfy themselves of your status in the UK to access that part of the website, and they will see a document confirming your status. And that is the correct way that EU citizens will prove that they've got pre-settled or settled status, actually, to future employers, for example. Now, that's not the same for non-EU citizens who are under that scheme. So for example,
like family members, yeah.
Correct. For my friend, that would have been his wife. And she actually, again, went into the same scheme as a family member of an EU citizen. And she got, again, pre-settled status, just like he did. But in her case, because she's not an EU national herself, she actually got a biometric card.
Okay.
So they will send family members who are non-EU, EEA, or Swiss nationals, for that matter, biometric cards at the end.
Right.
So you will have to you'll have to wait 10 working days or so after the application's been approved, and they'll post that in.
So if you're the EU citizen, you won't get the card. You'll have the digital link to prove your status.
Correct.
Your family members will get cards, though, to prove their status. And on the subject of spouses and family members, I think a lot of people are worried about how they register their dependents and wives and husbands for the scheme. So how does it work with family members?
So with family members, the current rules do allow sort of, if you want to look at it as a diagram, sort of, ascendants and descendants as sort of joining family members. But if you got siblings and uncles and all that, that doesn't work. So again, I can't sponsor my brother to come in if he's not an EU citizen, but I'm here under the scheme. But I can sponsor my granddad, would you believe, or my grandma to come in if I wanted to.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So ultimately, I myself have to be first and eligible EEA citizen. Now, there's a definition. I won't go into too much on this podcast, but ideally, one of the ways I'm an eligible EEA citizen is I've entered the UK before the end of last year, or by the 30th of December 2020, and I've gone on to this scheme. Now, if I am such a person, whether I'm in the UK or not, does not matter. So again, I had a consultation with someone yesterday. They came in, they got the pre-settled status, and then they left to finish their affairs in their home country, in South Africa, although they're Greek for that matter. But because he had entered before the end of last year and got the pre-settled status, his family members can come in, would you believe?
Wow,
with him at the same time
useful to know.
To the UK. And remember what I said earlier, there is no, at the moment, at this current time, there is no such deadline for family members of EEA nationals joining the EEA national in the UK, as long as I'm a relevant or eligible EEA national. So I must meet that definition. So if anyone's worried about it, first they need to confirm whether they are such an EEA citizen. If they are, then it's unlikely that they need to. It's probably quite straightforward to get their family over, as long as the relationship can be proven.
And for family who are already with you, do you include them on your application?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what you need to do. When you make your application, first you make your application as the EU citizen, I would suggest. Then when you make your children ones, or your wives, or your husbands for that matter, because when you make, especially the children's ones, you can link the applications. So when you are going to go ahead and do, say, any children under the age 21, I think, and go on to that, there will be a part of that online application where you can link your parents' applications to yours, or the fact that your parents already got it with a reference number. And what they'll do is they'll approve them on the basis that your parents have got them as well, and they will in the UK. Again, the spouse, similar thing. I would suggest first, or maybe at least a week before or 2 weeks before the main EU citizen applies, and then the EU or EA, because you can again link them or make reference to them as well, so they're done at the same time, which makes it quicker, easier, and also it adds substance to the actual application. So,
first you do your own as the EU citizen. First, you do your own one. Then a week or so later, you go in and you do your dependents and your spouse, or your parents, or whoever your family members who you're applying for, and you link them to your application. So you're saying to the government, look, all these people are with me, and then they'll evaluate them all as one.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
and then another question that a lot of people are asking is the government making any allowances for late applications, especially with the whole COVID situation?
Sure. So the simple answer is yes. They, in fact, have released recently, I won't go through it in great detail yet, can't say it yesterday, but they have released a policy on late applications, or included in a policy that we now have access to. So the simple answer is yes, they do, but you've got to have reasonable grounds for a late application. Now, examples of reasonable grounds, as far as my memory serves, onto that booklet were given. So some of them I can share with you here, which is number one that stuck out was children. So especially where children are displaced or are in foster homes, or their parents are not well and they've not made an application. So in other words, the UK has sort of a legal, obligation to consider what's in the child's best interests, especially the children in the UK. So they will allow late applications where it's no fault of the child that they haven't gone on to the scheme, because most likely the parents didn't take a certain step, or they're no parents. They were part of a leading guardianship or in a home somewhere. So that's number one example that was kind of given, and I think that's easily provable. It's a genuine situation. The second one was actually, again, victims of domestic abuse, again, where there is a pressure, from a partner or someone, that your husband or wife, not to do it, and the domestic abuse there as well, which can happen. So again, they will consider those sort of compassionate reasons as well. And the last one, which was on this booklet as well, was again, reasonable grounds covers compassionate reasons or extenuating circumstances. So again, COVID was mentioned in that part of the guidance. So where someone was, say, for example, not even aware of the deadline because they were so unwell, they were on a ventilator, for example, or something like that. So although the onus is on the applicant to provide proof that, they have a exceptional circumstance or eccentric circumstances where they couldn't get to a computer, maybe they didn't even have a place to live at in that time, so they didn't want to wear the deadline or couldn't meet the deadline because they didn't have access to these documents or computer or the internet. So there's a host of various reasons as examples, but it's not an exhaustive list. It's just an example set by.
They're gonna look at them like case by case basis. So basically, if you can do it now and you can't prove that you can't do it now, then you have to do it now.
Then you have to do it now.
Yeah. So the deadline's the end of this month, but that's for getting the application in, right? Not the approval.
That's
so
right.
You've still got 2 weeks or a week and a bit.
2 weeks to get this application in, correct? Yeah. So as long as the application is made and it's a valid application, and there is no there's no mistakes made whilst making that application, then they can't turn around and say it was invalid to start off with. So you didn't make a bad application. So it's very important to know, whether the ID app has worked, whether you have sent the correct documents, whether the application has been submitted. it wasn't that the internet fell at that point and you didn't submit. So one has to ensure that it was a valid application. And as long as that's been made before 30th of June 2021, then you should be fine going ahead. We obviously have resources here that can push forward these applications. So, we are welcoming a lot of people at the moment who are just rushing in the last hurrah before the deadline. So it's obviously quite busy, but again, it's now or never for most of these people, to be fair, because they won't have a valid reason as far as I'm concerned, because it has been a while that this scheme has been available to Europeans, especially those in the UK.
And so if people have questions about or about their status or about their situation, is there any way to actually get in touch with the government to ask?
Correct. So what we'll do is we will definitely in the write-up of this podcast post the link and the actual email address and the phone number to call, because they do have a team. It's called the EU Resolution Center, and they have a specific email that you can get in touch with them through. You can send an online inquiry as well, and you can also call them. And there are different numbers for those in the UK as compared to those out of the UK, and so on. So yes, absolutely, the public can get in touch in various ways with the Home Office.
Okay. And then do you want to talk a bit about the service that we offer?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, what I think a lot of people are doing this themselves, and that's the idea of the scheme, because that's why they made it very straightforward. But there will be always those people who don't fall into the brackets. So that's where we come in, really, or where we can provide the most sort of guidance on and representation on. So we do have a team here that specializes in these applications, that do them day in and day out. They are in the office every day as well. So, none of the Skype calls and so dropping in all that. So we are here, we are present, and, we offer a bespoke sort of service, not just on guiding whether someone's eligible, but also taking them through each part of the application, which is as important, and also what documents to provide. But at the same time, once the application's gone, and that's not where the representation ends, we actually continue presenting them until the point the application has been approved, and either the cards reach the family member or the emails, the letter has been sent to the relevant applicant. So, we are pushing, and if anyone listening to this podcast needs any advice or help, please feel free to get in touch with myself and my team.
Thanks so much, Mishal. Thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today to listen. Next episode, we'll be talking about ways that Americans might qualify for UK citizenship without even knowing it. So, look out for that one. It should be interesting listening, even if you're not American. I always find these interesting routes to UK citizenship fascinating. And we will chat soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you all.